I had a really hard time trying to figure out what to make a rant about. I looked at the schedule and then looked in my folder of rants and saw that so many of them were incomplete as I couldn't even finish them because I got stuck and just started rambling. I think I'm starting to go senile like Grandpa Simpson. Words just pouring out of my mouth while I have an onion strapped to my belt since it's currently the style. So after playing Rise of the Tomb Raider, I was going to talk about how Squeenix said that the game would not have been made without Microsoft's investment, which is currently the most completed rant aside from this one. Hopefully. So let's talk about how the AAA market is going stale, starting with a lack of color. Good God, you cannot go to a store and not see a game that isn't multiple shades of brown, or now it seems to be gray like dog shit's been sitting in the sun for too long as it calcifies. All these games have to be dark and gritty and raw adult. Can't we have something with vibrant colors? The last few games that came out that actually gave us some bright and vibrant colors was Sunset Overdrive and Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. At least the upcoming Ratchet & Clank reboot is going to give us some bright and vibrant color. But I don't even know if you could consider that a AAA series anymore. What is with the obsession with trying to make games look as realistic as possible? Is it really necessary? What happened with things looking cartoonish and vibrantly colorful? A game can be bright but also have serious adult elements in it. The Jak series is proof of that, especially Jak 2 and 3. Sure, we have Disney Infinity and Skylanders, but they're not the type of game that gives you a story with a defined character. Disney Infinity stories are told through playsets, but the characters you play as are pretty much just there. Skylanders gives you a story, but the characters you play as, the Skylanders, are just there. It's the other characters that supplement for everything else a Skylander would do. If an NPC character is in danger, another NPC saves them instead of the Skylander. I don't know about LEGO Dimensions because I still haven't played it. And speaking of, we get the LEGO games, but those really aren't original and mostly based off of movies, being a parody of them. I'm talking about more games like Jak, Sly, and Ratchet. We get the occasional Sonic or Mario game, but that seems to be it when it comes to colorful games. I keep seeing these games as they get darker and grayer and duller, and then I look at my wrists and think, maybe if I slit them, I'll see some color. The game worlds feel so completely dead without color, or at least some sort of style to them. Why do they have to be realistic all the time? I'm tired of realism. I think it's run its course. These are video games. They're supposed to be fantasy worlds, not places that resemble my backyard. Where's the imagination that games used to have? Where's any of the creativity we used to have in games? Why does every AAA game have to be a copy and paste of its predecessor? Or why does a new franchise have to copy what another one does with a bit of a slight twist? Like how Watch Dogs is Grand Theft Auto with a computer hacker instead of someone trying to be a crime lord. And speaking of characters, ever notice how they're all becoming dull carbon copies of each other, devoid of any and all personality? And these types of characters multiply more and more as the games that are in rank in huge amounts of cash. But yet the games where the character does have a personality of their own, that character is seen negatively. Someone asked why I've been reviewing games that are obscure indie games instead of more mainstream titles. Firstly, I don't have the money to shell out $60 on every new title that comes out. I plan my reviews based on what I have available, be it funds or what is currently in my library. And secondly, most AAA games have been getting so boring as they repeat the same formula over and over again. There's a movie that was made in 1981 called My Dinner with Andre. In the movie, the character Andre talks about being bored, and that this boredom is a self-perpetuating unconscious form of brainwashing, created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that a bored person is someone who is asleep, and that a person that's asleep can't say no. Doesn't this sound familiar with how the so-called AAA industry operates? The sequel after sequel, creating the same game over and over again with little variation between them, maybe refining the game until it's just the same thing being released. And people are happy to keep buying games that are more of the same with each iteration. But when the developers start making changes or including things that may be more fun to keep things fresh, they are either severely limited or the publisher demands something be added that will more than likely cause the death of the series, returning things to the status quo. I think Dead Space is probably the best example of that. The first and second were highly praised, averaging 9 out of 10, while the third is about a 7.5 out of 10. And while praised, it is the most criticized of the main series. And the developer went on to make the Battlefield 3 Endgame DLC, Army of Two, The Devil's Cartel, and Battlefield Hardline, returning again to the status quo. While EA has said that the franchise hasn't been cancelled and remains remains an important brand, there hasn't been an announcement of a new game in the series. The first came out in 2008, the second in 2011, and the third in 2013. And it's been 3 years since the last game and no announcement of a fourth installment of the main series. Doesn't that seem a little strange to you that even though they claim the series is important to them, EA goes back to making Battlefield games? Or look how long it took them to make a new Mirror's Edge. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that games that challenge the status quo seem to be very far and few between? Even with Batman Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight, people criticized the series was getting stale after Arkham City. Is it possible that they keep producing these games that copy and paste the same formula in a similar manner to brainwashing, so that way they can keep producing games every year or two in a similar process to how things are manufactured on an assembly line, as they could reuse the game engine and assets with small tweaks to produce the game faster? And anything with actual creativity that ends up in the AAA market is quickly dealt with so that it dies, either producing not so good sequels or just trying to make it die off by forgetting that it ever existed. But if they just keep reusing the same stale formula, then you as a player stop thinking and you stop asking for more creativity but keep asking for the same thing, which in turn systematically kills off other games because no one buys them. Why is it that all the mainstream gaming media always praises the AAA games but doesn't seem to care much about the others, while the other games are left to get praise from those of us that are independent with our own audiences? I just find all these so-called AAA games to be so incredibly boring. Boring characters, boring stories, and boring visuals. It's getting to be the point where it's just color by numbers. You know how the next Assassin's Creed is going to be. You know how the next Call of Duty or Battlefield is going to be. Even with new franchises, you could tell how they're going to be. You could tell how Evolve or Titanfall were going to be. And does anyone even play those games anymore? Sure, there's the occasional exemption like Rise of the Tomb Raider that challenged the status quo. But considering how the game came out at the same day as Fallout 4, was exclusive to Xbox systems and now PC, with a PS4 version coming this winter, with all those bad choices they made, doesn't that sound like they're purposely trying to kill it off so they can claim it was low sales and lack of interest? Like how Capcom claimed that it was a lack of interest in Mega Man Legends 3 that killed it off, when we all know that was a bullshit excuse just so they could go back to the status quo? Sadly, I don't see this trend going away anytime soon. As I mentioned earlier, it's conditioning, and as I mentioned in past videos, they hype up games to a point where you become brainwashed and are suckered into it. Even if the game is painfully mediocre like The Division, it's like they're trying to get rid of independent thought, making sure that everyone gets on board the same train, as you don't want independent thinkers hurting your ticket sales, because that's something the Gestapo, I mean the game publishers, don't want. They want loyal, obedient gamers getting on that train and buying their snake oil.